Hey, what's going on, everybody? Happy Tuesday. Welcome to another edition of Mean Streets, powered by FTN, presented by Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney hanging with you. A lot to get to here today on the show. A jam-packed day, of course, in the sports world. The Stanley Cup Playoffs got underway yesterday. We have 4 more games on the ice tonight, and we do have some heavy favorites on the NHL slate tonight. The Calgary Flames at home, not just heavy favorites in game 1, but massive favorites to take Dallas down in the first round. The Colorado Avalanche at home, minus 650 favorites to win their series against the Nashville Predators. And we do have a tighter game between the New York Rangers and the Pittsburgh Penguins, but we do have a lot of massive favorites on the board here today. We're going to break them all down. We got some picks and some props. Going to take a look just deeper into the Rangers and the Penguins series, as well as the Florida Panthers, massive favorites at home against the Washington Capitals. The Florida Panthers won 58 games this season. 58 games and 34 and 7 on home ice. They are indeed big favorites, but the Caps are not going to go away easy. I think this is going to be a series, and we'll talk about it in a little bit. Also, 2 NBA playoff games. We have a free NBA pick of the day, which we'll get into a little bit later on. We have I almost said the Brooklyn Nets. Sorry, Tino. Brooklyn Nets are done. See you later. Swept. The Boston Celtics lost game 1 against the Milwaukee Bucks. They're 5-point favorites, though, the Celtics here at home against Milwaukee, as the Bucks look to take a 2-0 series lead. That game was really tight all the way up until the later part of the contest. But the Celtics, they did look in control early on, playing some really good ball, and they have played really good ball. But I do believe that they have their hands full with the defending champions in Milwaukee. And also the Golden State Warriors playing Memphis here tonight. They're just 2-point favorites, the Warriors. It's really hard for me to bet against this Warriors team. They just look really good, right? I mean, no Dre. He was ejected early, and they still found a way to win that game, only by a point. Memphis does have a lot to offer offensively. They haven't been here before, the Warriors have, and I think the pressure would be on Golden State, but it is really tough for me to pick against this Warriors team, especially when I see them favored just by 2 points, right? I'm looking over at the prop shop, free prop shop parlay calculator over at ftnbets.com to get the best possible odds. Also, a handful of games around the diamond as well. Get into the Jays and the Yankees. Alek Manoah, who has owned the Yanks in his 3 starts against New York. He is perfect, really. I mean, he's 2-0, and he's been perfect this season with 4 Ws and a sparkling 1.44 ERA. We'll get into the Jays in a little bit. My Halos are up against Georgia's Red Sox. Not even going to really talk about it. That's it. I think I was going to come in here with the Angels and a Red Sox pick. The under, I think, 4 runs in the first 5 innings with Noah Syndergaard and Michael Wacha on the hill. Both pitchers been pretty good. Both offenses have a lot of firepower. Haven't really seen it yet from Boston. Kind of feel like the under 4 in the first 5 innings may be the play. But going to give a little bit of love to the White Sox. They're up against Drew Smyly, a lefty on the hill for the Cubs. It's Chicago versus Chicago. And I do like the white-colored Sox today and not the red-colored Sox, George. Before we get into all of this, and also kind of want to recap the NFL draft, we did it too quickly yesterday. I had more thoughts to share. So towards the end of the show, if we have this timed out perfectly, like we always do, right? Anthem Sports and Entertainment, Game Plus Network, hanging out with us here today. We will dive into some of the rookie wide receivers and running backs that were selected in the NFL draft, maybe touching the quarterbacks. There just really isn't a whole lot to say when it comes to the quarterbacks. Kenny Pickett, the only guy drafted in the first round, 20th overall to Pittsburgh. Desmond Ridder, I suppose, has an opportunity to play in Atlanta this season. Got him late in the second round. Going to battle it out with Marcus Mariota. Not a whole lot to love there from an Atlanta Falcons standpoint this season, but they did get themselves Drake London, and they do have a really good player in Kyle Pitts. And they're also going to be a team that's throwing the ball a lot, right? Because the defense is atrocious. There's a lot of holes in the squad. It could be an interesting, fantasy environment for a guy like London and maybe Ridder. Why not give him an opportunity? Maybe you're heading into camp with Marcus Mariota as your guy, the number 1 guy, experience, didn't really do a whole lot last year with the Raiders, kind of get in there in certain situations, red zone packages. I thought he was okay with the Titans in the first couple of years of his career. Just okay, but I think people are harder on him. Throughout the NFL draft, we streamed it live right here on our FTN YouTube page on Thursday and Friday, the first 3 rounds. It's all the comments I heard. It was like, oh, Mariota stinks. Mariota's no good. I think he's okay. I think that early on in his career, his first 3 years, he had a different offensive coordinator each of those first 3 years. That's super tough. I think that's challenging. Maybe behind the Raiders and Derek Carr, who's certainly a serviceable quarterback. Maybe he learned a thing or two, but now he's back there with Arthur Smith, right, in Atlanta. Very familiar with him. In Tennessee, they have a relationship of rapport. Maybe he can get something out of him. It's not a lock that Ritter will be the week 1 starter, but certainly if you're Atlanta, you want to see what you have in this guy. The season's, they're probably going to be a 5.5 win total team heading in. I would lean to the under when it comes to the Falcons, but next year's quarterback class, there's going to be more than 2 quarterbacks going in the first 2 rounds, I'll tell you that. And Atlanta's they're going to want to be in the running. So let's see what they have in Ritter. Roll him out all year. And then, if you're satisfied, maybe you pass on a quarterback next year. But if you're not, you're in the quarterback market yet again. It was a weird NFL draft. It was certainly unique. A lot to get to on this show. But I want to give some love to Dangle Betselli, which is officially live on Game Plus Network today, debuting at 5 Eastern. You can catch Dangle Betselli, presented by PointsBet, live on Game Plus Network every Tuesday and Thursday. I guess it's not really live. I won't lie to the viewers of the audience and the listeners, I suppose. Dangle Betselli is recorded every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 Eastern right here on our FTN YouTube page. You can hang out with us. I know some people have asked if the show will still be available on our YouTube page, and it is. We already recorded it earlier today, myself and Eric Young. We recapped last night's 4 games in the NHL, and we took a look at the 4 games happening tonight. We called some shot props, some picks, and a little bit of fantasy advice in there as well. We had some people hanging out with us. They had some questions. We have a sharp audience when it comes to Dangle Betselli. People are coming in with statistics of their own, stats, props, and picks that they like. It's a very sharp family, and we're super thrilled with the opportunity to be on Game Plus Network. As I always say, a fantastic lineup on Game Plus Network, and it is taking the replay spot of Mean Streets, which you can catch. Of course, you're watching live on Game Plus Monday to Friday at 2 Eastern. The replay on Tuesdays and Thursdays, Dangle Betselli. Eric Young is truly a fantasy hockey psycho. Like, he really does watch all of the games. He says 300 plus, and I believe him. He was overseas last month. Dude was texting me at like 5 in the morning his time, watching hockey games that really didn't matter. Nothing on the line besides him calling goal scorers, me calling shot props, and sprinkling a little money on sides and totals, things like that. A little bit of DFS sprinkled in there, but it's mostly just a straight up hockey show, recapping all the games, and we'll be with you over at Game Plus Network and live on our FTN YouTube page. You can listen on iTunes, Spotify, right until that Stanley Cup is raised. And I thought we had a decent day yesterday. We did have the Oilers and the Kings over. We talked about Adrian Kempe, a 2-unit play for shot props. He had 4 in the first period. He had a team high 9 shot attempts and 6 shots on goal yesterday for the Kings as they went into Edmonton and upset the Oilers. We'll talk about last night's action a little bit more. I'll tell you what, those north of the border, Toronto Maple Leafs looked pretty darn good yesterday, didn't they? They looked really good. Did they play their best game of the season last night? They've been playing really good hockey this year. Definitely really good hockey down the stretch of the season, the last 6 weeks. It was, not going to lie, it must have been really fun for Leaf fans. This year's playoffs, you got a taste of, Stanley Cup Playoffs is amazing, but we got a bit of a taste of it because what we've forgotten last year with no fans in the building. Montreal and Toronto, first round last year, we didn't get fans. We didn't get the full capacity with those 2 teams playing in the playoffs for the first time in the 70s? We didn't get the fans, that atmosphere, which would have been electric, Montreal and Toronto. And it was electric last night at Scotiabank Place. It really was. I don't know if I've seen that building like that before. You could see the urgency in the Leafs game, and they really overtook the game early on with special teams. The Bolts had a 5-minute power play. Not only did they not get a shot on goal, they didn't even have a shot attempt in that game. Really, really impressive stuff from the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think you're going to see a bounce-back performance from Tampa Bay. It should be a long, entertaining series. We'll break, and we'll continue the hockey talk. I do want to get into the Rangers and the Penguins, some series odds, take a look at tonight's Game 1. Also, Florida and Washington should be phenomenal. Alex Ovechkin, 50-goal season again, up against the #1 offensive team in the league and the best team on home ice in Florida. And we will dive into the other 2 series as well, Colorado and Nashville, and then we have Dallas and Calgary. And I do have some shot props. I do have some picks for you guys, so hang on, and a lot to get to here on this show. So we'll take a quick break, and we'll be back here on Game Plus Network. Keep her locked. Welcome back in. Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney here with you, just laughing at some of the comments throughout the break. McCormick, I'll keep the show. I'll keep things on time here. And as I my first block is like 10 minutes here, and I had planned it for like 6, but you know, things happen. I get rambling. I'm riding solo here with you today. We're looking for a guest here tomorrow. I do believe we have a couple lined up for the rest of the week to maybe dive into some golf tomorrow, but really get somebody else in that will, you know, give their take on some of the rookies that were selected in the NFL. I have some takes, but I'm sure you'd like to hear some other ones as well. And a little bit later on in the week, you know, I'm going to present just the rookie order for some of these players that went over the weekend, but I'm going to give you just where they fit in from a redraft standpoint and a dynasty standpoint as well, as the dust has settled in the NFL. Still a couple like decent players out there that could be signed. I know Honey Badger signed yesterday with the Saints, right? Tyrann Mathieu, pretty good signing. You know, really wish he went to Philadelphia. They could use him. Going to the Saints, it's a great move for New Orleans. And Jarvis Landry's still hanging out. Is he going back to Cleveland now that Deshaun Watson's there? What's he doing? Because he's a veteran wide receiver that could certainly offer a lot to teams and in the PPR landscape, full point PPR, depending on his situation. I know the Browns did draft a guy in David Bell, but he's not going to be a slot guy. I think they could really use Jarvis Landry, so we'll see if he comes back. Yes, the Daily Handle, the Dandle Haley. Yesterday I said Minnesota Blues, and when you pick the Minnesota Blues to win a game, you can't go wrong. The Blues did win last night, but Daily Handle, Ovechkin is going to play here tonight. He is going to play, and that is good news for the Washington Capitals. And you know what? He was pretty good in the 3 games against Florida. He had 4 goals. One game he had a hat trick. He had 6 points. He cleared 3.5 shots in all of his games. I didn't give that. I'm going to give you some shot props and some point and assist props a little bit later on. I didn't give Ovechkin, but I do like him at 3.5 at around -145. Just didn't want to give a 3.5 shot prop play at -145 with that kind of juice. It's not really how I roll, but I'll tell you what, I'm going to be involved with Alex Ovechkin tonight to have at least 4 shots in this hockey game this evening. But let's start with the New York Rangers and the Pittsburgh Penguins happening tonight at MSG. You see the series prices there, and you know this has changed just slightly. The Rangers are now, you know, slight favorites to win this series tonight. They're -140 to win this series. Again, shop around. We have the free prop shop and parlay calculator over at FTN Bets to get the best possible odds. If you wanted to just take the Rangers on the money line, I am seeing over at Caesars -140. We got pointsbet.ca in the house, -140 as well. FanDuel's got him at -135, BetMGM -145. So I love the prop shop, the parlay calculator over at ftnbets.com. It saves you a whole lot of time, so you don't have to surf around to find the best possible odds. But I do like this Rangers squad tonight against the Penguins, and the difference to me is going to be in goal. It really is. I have a hard time betting against Sidney Crosby when it comes to this time of the season, right? I mean, he's got 3 cups on the resume. Evgeny Malkin's got some cups. Jake Gensel, Chris Letang's got cups. Like, there's a lot of experience on this Pittsburgh Penguins team, but what has gotten them in trouble over the past couple of seasons is goaltending. A couple years ago in the bubble, they got bounced by the Habs in the first round, and that wasn't even technically the first round. That was just to get into the playoffs. It was really the play-in. I don't know if we can officially call that the first round of the playoffs. In fact, you can't, but Pittsburgh was in trouble in that series in goal. Of course, they ran into a hot Carey Price, which most times Carey Price is certainly hot in the playoffs, but they were back and forth, right? With Tristan Jarry and Matt Murray, they didn't know what to do. And then last year they got bounced in the first round against the Islanders. Tristan Jarry didn't look all that good. Now Tristan Jarry, who was phenomenal in the first 2 months of this season, it kind of cooled off in the middle parts, and what he was doing was a little bit unsustainable. I saw some regression in his game. But he is clearly the number one goalie on this team. And it's not, I don't want to sit here and take shots at Casey DeSmith. And he had a really good 52 save shutout a couple weeks ago against the Boston Bruins. But this is a mismatch on paper. And this is what it's going to come down to in this series is goaltending. Igor Shesterkin, going to win Vezina this season, should be a Hart nominee as the league's MVP of the year. You take him away from this Rangers team, they're a bubble team. They're a bubble playoff team. Their 5-5 numbers, not great. You're the bottom 7, bottom 5 in terms of generating shot attempts and allowing shot attempts. Their special teams, really good this season. Really strong. Power play, phenomenal. Really is. Top 5 in the league. Top 10 penalty kill. Penguins actually have the edge in penalty kill, number 3. But this is a Rangers team. Goals for at 5-5 per 60, 21 in the NHL. Goals for overall, 16 in the NHL. The Pens have the advantage there. They generate more. Just shot attempts, shots on goal, high danger chances, they really do. They're the better 5-5 team, but at the end of the day, it's all about Igor Shesterkin. The Rangers took 3 of 4 against the Penguins this season, and Pittsburgh was held to 2 goals or fewer in all of those games. A 1-0 victory by Pittsburgh earlier in the season, and then the last couple, a 5-1 victory by the Rangers, a 3-2 victory by the Rangers, and a 3-0 victory by the Rangers. And those 3 games came in a 2-week span from the end of March 21st, to April 7th. So pretty good sample, right? And a recent sample with these two teams. The trade additions were there. Rickard Rakell, Andrew Kopp, Frank Vetrano. Crosby didn't play in one of those games. We did see Shesterkin between the pipes. So I got to give the benefit of the doubt here to New York. I think, the experience that Pittsburgh has could push this to 6 or potentially 7. I do have the Rangers winning in 6, and tonight I like them and the under, which you can get at PointsBet, the Rangers and the under at plus 135. Again, use the free prop shop parlay calculator over at FTN. I'm plugging it in right now. You get -1 or you get plus 135 for the Rangers and the under. There's a lot of chalk here tonight. There's a lot of just heavy favorites here this evening. This is a pretty decent spot for New York at home, even just to take them at -140 if you want it. But the under, I think, certainly is a play, considering that the Penguins only scored 4 goals in 4 games against the Rangers this season. All right, the other series I'm looking at here tonight is Florida and Washington, because it's going to be just highly entertaining. And you see the series odds there as Florida checks in. Just massive favorites here, -340 to win this series. And even tonight, even crazier, right? I mean, not as much as -340, but -240 for the Florida Panthers. We know about how strong this Panthers team, number 1 in the NHL in goals, number 1 in the NHL in goals at home, generating a lot of offense so far this season. A lot of guys' career years, Barkov, Huberdeau, Duclair, Bennett, Reinhart. Bobrovsky wasn't as bad as people think. It's all anybody wants to talk about. Well, they allow a lot, 17th in the NHL in goals allowed per 60 this season. Overall, goals allowed on the season, 2.95, number 12 in the NHL. That's not bad. It's not awful. I think they allowed fewer goals per game than Washington this season. Ilya Samsonov is a guy that, he's been up and down. I see upside for him long term, but he's been up and down. And Bobrovsky's had a decent season. He's had a pretty good year. I think it's a wash in net, and it's not a wash offensively. Even though the Capitals do have some experience themselves, a couple years removed from winning the Stanley Cup against Vegas, We know about Ovechkin, another 50-goal campaign. Nobody's talking about Ovechkin at all. Just quietly, another 50 goals, just over 100 away from Gretzky. I think he might do it. If he scored 50 this year, I think he can get to 40 next year. Why not? But they do have some guys like Anthony Mantha and Oshie. Backstrom's not a big offensive guy. He's more of a pass-first guy. Kuznetsov, same sort of deal. But the Panthers got 3 really strong lines and solid lines, and they're going to get back Aaron Ekblad as well. I do believe this series will go about 6 games. I think Colorado tonight against Nashville with no UC Saros. I think the Avs probably roll, even though the Preds took 3 of 4, including 3 straight. Matthew Shane had a really good run against his former team. I expect him to be a factor as well. You're getting Gabriel Landeskog back in the lineup for the Avs. Just no UC Saros. You're not going to get a whole lot from big, what is it? What do they call him? Big Save Dave Riddick? Yeah, I think so. I think they called him that in Calgary. I don't know if they're calling him that in Nashville. They'd like to call him that in Nashville, no question. But it's just, again, another mismatch between the pipes with Riddick up against Darcy Kemper, and Saros is already ruled out for games 1 and 2, and I don't think we see him at all in this series. That one's most likely going to go 4 or 5. I think I give the benefit of the doubt for the Preds to win a game. You can get plus 220 for the Avs to win in 5. You can get plus 330 for a sweep if you want to put half a unit on that. I do think Colorado, as much as there's a lot of pressure on the Avs, there should be more pressure on the Avs than the Leafs, but the Leafs, it's a hockey mecca, everything kind of revolves around the Leafs, certainly north of the border. Nobody's really talking about the Avs and the pressure that they have, but I don't remember the last time I've seen a team be favored to win the Stanley Cup in each of the last 3 seasons and not get past the second round, right? They've had issues getting past the second round, and they'll have a tough matchup in the second round, whether it's the Blues or the Minnesota Wild. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, but I do believe this is the most lopsided series just because of the goaltending issue. If UC Saros was between the pipes here tonight and in this series, I would feel pretty confident saying that the Preds would win 2 games, at least 2 games, and certainly at home. They're a strong team at Bridgestone Arena. They play really good hockey. I got some props from this game in the next segment that we'll dive into, and I also think Calgary will make quick work of the Dallas Stars as well. And these 2 teams are very different. Dallas is inside the top 10 in all the categories that I care about: goals for overall, and 5 and 5 per 60 from our friends over at Natural Stat Trick. Top 10 power play, penalty kill percentage, and the stingiest team at 5 and 5 per 60. Only 2.1 goals per game or per 60 allowed. And the Dallas Stars, number 30 in the NHL in goals for per 60 this season. Number 30 in the NHL. And over the last 5 weeks of the season, only the Arizona Coyotes scored fewer goals than the Dallas Stars at 5 and 5 per 60. That's going to be an issue. They're a one-line team. I think Eric Young said it this morning on Dangle Betselli that 48% of their goals this season have come from their top line. It's a really good top line. Rupe Hintz, Jason Robertson, Joe Pavelski. It's a really, really strong top line. Calgary's got an even better top line with Matthew Tkachuk, Johnny Hockey, and Elias Lindholm, who's one of the best defensive centers in the entire league that nobody talks about. And I think Sutter's probably like, you know what? We'll just go line for line. We'll go line for line. We'll try to stop this top line for Dallas. And where else is the offense going to come from? Out of all the teams in the playoffs, this is the team that scored the fewest goals at 5 and 5 per 60 on the road. The second fewest goals at 5 and 5 per 60 as well. They're gonna have their hands full with this Flames team, they're just so sound offensively. So this is another series that I think will go pretty quickly. It'll be over. I think 5. I think I picked the Flames in 6 actually, but I think the Flames in 5 is certainly in play, and also another play at plus 220 if you wanted to go that route. You see the Stanley Cup odds there. That this is from before the games played. Minnesota I'm seeing this morning at 18-1, 19-1, just because they're down. But I thought that they really played a strong game last night at 5 and 5 per 60. I thought that they were the better team. They had more scoring chances, more high danger chances. But something I said yesterday on this show is that the Blues special teams is absolutely awesome. Their power play is fantastic. And you saw that last night. 2 power play goals. A lot of experience on that Blues squad as well, just also a couple years removed from winning a Stanley Cup. They went into Minnesota and beat a really good team, a team that has been really dominant on home ice. It was a great first win for the Blues. I don't want to say it's a must-win situation for Minnesota in Game 2, but they didn't need to stay out of the box. If they're going to be taking penalties left, right, and center, it's GG. They are going to be done because they cannot compete with that Blues squad. Their second unit is better than most teams. I would say a good 10 to 12 teams, number 1 power play in the NHL. Certainly, their second unit's better than Montreal's first unit, I'll tell you that. Worth look, Minnesota price, I like where McCormick's head's at, right? I like where McCormick's head's at. It is worth a price, I think. We'll break. We'll talk about that. I'll find those odds, Sean, and I'll dive into some props and some shot props that I like here tonight as well. I'm excited. I'm excited, and I talk a little fast when I'm excited. So bear with me. Lots more hockey talk here next. Keep her locked. Welcome back in. Mean Streets here live on Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney hanging with you. Yes, McCormick plus 165 is what I saw too for the Minnesota Wild. I think it's interesting. I also think that the Bruins at plus 170 to come back in the series is interesting as well. With that said, the Bruins have 2 goals in 4 games against Carolina this season. 2 goals. They've been outscored 25-2. I thought they had a really strong game last night. Antti Raanta was pretty good between the pipes. Actually really good last night. I thought Boston had a really strong push in the third. I thought they had a phenomenal start last night. They had Carolina on their heels. I think the shots were like 9-1, 9-2 to start. Raanta held them in. I'm not counting the Bruins out of this series just yet. Another team that has a ton of experience. Both very similar squads when you're matching up Carolina and Boston. Both teams like number 1 and number 2 and eliminating high danger chances and shot attempts. And both teams like to control the puck as well, possess the puck and really they put the puck on net quite a bit at 5-5. But it's been a rough go for Boston against Carolina this season. 3-0 loss, a 7-1 loss, a 6-0 loss, and a 5-1 loss. And that game was a lot closer last night than the score will indicate. And same thing for Minnesota. This is from Natural Stat Trick, and I just want to rattle off some of these numbers. Why not? We're having a bit of a hockey conversation here. So Minnesota last night, first period, 15 shot attempts, just 7 against. The scoring chances 7-4 in favor of Minnesota. The shots pretty equal, 7-7. The second period, Minnesota 16 shot attempts, 6 against. The shots 9-4 in favor of Minnesota. The scoring chances 8-1. The high danger chances 7-0. In the third period, where the game is kind of out of hand, still Minnesota was pressing and they were pushing. 13-4 the shot attempts, 7-4 the shots. The scoring chances 3-2 and the high danger chances 2-0. So overall, at 5-on-5 last night, Minnesota had 44 shot attempts and just 17 against. They had 23 shots and 15 against. They had 18 scoring chances and 7 against. And they had 12 high danger chances and 4 against. For those who missed the show yesterday, it's really all I talked about. That Minnesota is one of the best teams in the league at 5-5, right there in goals for, just a tick behind the Florida Panthers at 5-5. They don't give up a whole lot. They're very stingy. But the difference between the two teams is special teams. The Blues, power play, it's lethal. They had 2 power play goals last night. They had one early in that game, quickly. They had a penalty shot in the first 2 minutes of the game. Minnesota needs to stay out of the box. I'm still in on the Wild. I had the series going 7. I still like them. They lost last night. I still like this squad. It's the toughest series for me to call. It was the toughest. The Blues are playing really good hockey down the stretch. They got, I think, 6 or 7 guys with double-digit goals. Like, they just go up and down their lineup. They got a lot of offense. I think they have slightly more offense than the Minnesota Wild, but I like the way the Wild play. They play heavy. I would give the edge to the Blues defense. Husso got game 1. I think they'll go back to Fleury. I would take the over 3.5 on goalie appearances in this series. I think we'll see Binnington. I think we'll see Talbot at times. And you know what? We may see Talbot in game 3. They could just go to him if you see Fleury, if he can't give them a W in game 2. But I like where your head's at, McCormick. I think it's worth a look. Do you strongly consider regular season series record when betting a team in the playoffs, betting Canes versus Boston, for example? It's a great question, Daily Handle. I do look at it, but it's not everything, right? Like I said in the last segment, the Nashville's beaten Colorado in 3 of 4, and including 3 straight and a couple over the past couple of weeks. But Colorado was missing a few players, and no UC Soros. But it is something to consider. In the Washington series, for example, as well, when I'm looking, and I don't know if I even brought this up, but the total is 6.5. The total is 6.5. I mean, we saw 25 goals in 3 games between those two teams. We're going to see some offense in that series, and that's something I would take a look at. Right, 13-12, Florida outscored them. 5-4, 4-3, 5-4, a lot of offense. It's a trend that I think will continue. And with Boston and Carolina, yes, Carolina's had their number. The Daily Handle. The biggest trend I think I would take away from that is unders. Unders in those series with 2 decent goalies. Even, if Anderson gets back clearly, he's much better than Antti Ranta, but Carolina, the fewest goals against average in the entire NHL, and Boston pretty stingy as well, even if, if Linus Ullmark falters a bit, and I thought he was great last night, for whatever reason, if they go to Swayman, he's really strong as well. I think the trend that I would take there is unders. There's something to said about the matches, teams playing each other. You can take that maybe with a grain of salt, but it does matter a little bit. And it's something that I looked into with all the series. And in particular, we're going to look at line matches and lineups. Like last night, I noticed Joel Eriksson Ek was on the ice every time that Robert Thomas, Vladimir Tarasenko, and Pavel Buchnevich were on the ice, as much as they could. And Joel Eriksson Ek is one of the better defensive centers. That's not something that they really did a whole lot of in the regular season, but that's something that teams will do here in the playoffs. You saw it last night, the line matching between John Cooper and Sheldon Keefe. You saw a little bit of that as well. Austin Matthews' line was a third line to get out on the ice. Things like that we'll keep an eye on, and that you didn't really see in the regular season matchups, but you will see in the playoffs. And you know what? Robert Thomas, that line is one of the hottest lines in the NHL over the last 6 weeks. It didn't do anything last night. And that's, I think, part of the Joel Eriksson Ek shutdown abilities that he has. All right, a couple shot props and some point props that I like. I think my favorite shot prop here this evening is Sam Bennett. Sam Bennett's been a guy we've been riding all year long. You can get over 2.5 over at Caesars at -130. There's a real difference in Sam Bennett's splits on home ice and on the road. For example, this season on home ice, he had 36 games. He had 21 goals. And he had 35 points, basically a point per game player on home ice. He had 154 shots in 36 games on home ice. That's 4.27 shots per game. On the road, in 35 games, he had just 7 goals compared to 21. He had 14 points. And he had 87 shots on goal in 35 games. That's 2.4. And more home cooking here for you when it comes to Sam Bennett. He's had at least 3 shots in 8 of his last 9 home games and at least 3 shots in 16 of his past 18 home games. We're getting a pretty good price here with Sam Bennett playing on the second line. He's not on that first power play, but there is a real difference here in Sam Bennett at home, a point per game guy, compared to Sam Bennett on the road. In terms of goals as well, 21 and 36 is phenomenal. 7 and 35, not so much. But really the difference is the shots. 4.27 is what he averaged at home and just 2.4 on the road. So I like him. That's where I'm starting most of my shot prop bets here. But there are a couple more shot props that I do like for this evening's slate. And you see there, Cale Makar is one of them. I was looking for Valery Nichushkin here, but Cale Makar will do. He's cleared 2.5 in 9 of his last 12 and in 3 games against Nashville. These are things I'm looking at as well, the Daily Handle. Which players, did well against these teams that they have played. And, you could take advantage of some of these teams. But here in this spot, Makar, 11 shots in 3 games against the Preds this season. 2 of those games, he had 5 shots. Nichushkin, if you can find him, I wasn't able to find him this morning. I do expect Gabriel Landeskog to return tonight, but I don't expect him to take that top line. I think we'll see Nichushkin with Rantanen and Nathan McKinnon, that old boy from Cole Harbour, Nova Scotia. And on the second line, I think we'll see probably Kadri, Burakovsky, and Gabriel Landeskog. More on Landeskog in a little bit. But if you can find Nichushkin, he has had at least 3 shots in 9 of his past 11. And a lot of those games, he was at 4. Inside that same game, a bit of a revenge narrative here that we can have some fun with. But Matt Duchene, 4 goals and 14 shots in 3 games against the Avs. He cleared 2.5 in all 3 of those games, 3, 5, and 6. And overall, he's had at least 3 shots in 9 of his past 11. Philip Forsberg, if you can find him at 2.5, is juiced. I see most books have him at 3.5. You can get Matt Duchene at minus 120 for him to have 3 shots in this game. And then Jason Robertson is the bonus play here. I was going to give Johnny Hockey, but he's kind of juiced up. I do like Johnny Hockey, Johnny Gaudreau, and Matthew Tkachuk to have 3 shots here tonight, but I went with Jason Robertson, who has cleared in 10 of his last 11 games, and he cleared in 2 of his 3 against the Calgary Flames. So I do like Jason Robertson as the one guy that I'll probably go to on Dallas. I think Tyler Seguin is certainly in play at even money down the stretch. He put a lot of pucks on net, but I'm going to go with Robertson. And if you're looking for somebody else in that game, I would go with Johnny Hockey or Matthew Tkachuk. I didn't give anything on the Pittsburgh-New York side. I just think it's going to be really stingy, not a lot of offense. I like Sidney Crosby at 2.5, and Brian Russ would be the 2 guys at 2.5. But here are a couple point props that we could get into this evening, and certainly with that Rangers game as well. I like Nichushkin up at the top. I gave him some love. I was able to find him for a point prop. He does have 12 points in his last 10 games. No UC Staros here. The Avs have the highest team applied total on the slate, and at home, expect him to take that top line, to keep that top line. He's been really good this season too. So 12 points in his last 10 at minus 145. He's also plus 150 for an assist tonight. When you're playing with those studs, you sometimes fall into an assist. Andrew Kopp here at minus 110 for a point. The mismatch between the pipes, Casey DeSmith, not Tristan Jarry tonight. Andrew Kopp, 8 goals and 18 points in 16 games with the New York Rangers. I mentioned Bennett, a point per game guy on home ice, so I like him to find the score sheet tonight. Noah Hanifin, plus money point here. Don't usually come in with a defenseman to hit the score sheet, but 16 points in 15 games in April. He has 14 points in his last 12 games, and he's overtaken the quarterback role on that number 1 power play for the Calgary Flames, which is absolutely lethal. So I like Noah Hanifin to have a point here. Gabriel Landeskog hasn't played in quite some time, but he's going to be on that first power play unit. Like the Preds probably to score 3 or 4 goals here today. That's just a really good price for Landeskog to have an assist at plus 160. And then Giroux. I was actually surprised to see Giroux at plus 110 for an assist. He's played 18 games with Florida. He's got 3 goals and 20 assists. He got 20 assists. 20 assists in 18 games with the Panthers, and we're getting plus money. You kidding me? I love that. He's got 23 points overall in those 18 games with Florida. So that's what I'm thinking from a point standpoint. I got some shot props and some goal scorers and some sides in there as well. Rangers in the under. I like the over in the Florida game. I like the under in Calgary. I think the Flames probably win 3-1. The under, they're also in play on the puck line. I like the over between Colorado and Nashville as well. All right, we'll take a break from hockey. We've got some NBA stuff in here next. Keep her locked. Welcome back in. I lied. We're going to talk a little Major League Baseball. I'm going to save the basketball for the very end. We have a free bet, and then there's a prop that I do like tonight. We'll save that for the very end. I want to talk some Major League Baseball here with you, and this is what I'm thinking from just a pick standpoint. I do have a prop in there as well. I like the Chicago White Sox. I'm going to pick on Drew Smyly here a little bit, pitching for the Chicago Cubs. You see Tim Anderson at the bottom there, over 1.5 total bases at plus 110. You can get plus 180 for him to have 2 hits as well. I want to pick on Drew Smyly just a little bit. So far in 19 and a third innings, he's allowed 18 hits and 4 homers. He faced the Pittsburgh Pirates a couple outings ago, and they do not have a good offense, and they rocked them. They had 2 homers, 4 earned runs on 6 hits. Drew Smyly is an absolute gas can. The guy just gives up home runs. He really does. In 2021, he allowed 27 homers. In 2019, he allowed 32 homers. And in 2016, he allowed 32 homers. Like, he's been hurt. There's been some issues with him. So if you look, there's been some years missing. Of course, from 2016 to 2019, he missed a couple years. And then 2020 was a very small sample size. But the guy's given up 90 plus home runs in his last 3 seasons. And they're not even full seasons. Mike Convery in the house. Dude, Mike Convery, you won an NFL package. I meant to hit you up. You won an NFL package. I announced it on the NFL draft show on Thursday because you gave your bets on the show last week and you're successful. I pulled it out. I got the sheet right here, dude. I don't know if you're a big fantasy football fan, but that's Mike Convery. You hit me up later. DM at Chris Meaney. You got a fantasy football package throughout the entire season, rankings, all that good stuff. And you have a rookie scouting guide courtesy of Jeff Ratcliffe. Wait, what? That's yours, dude. That is yours. Congrats on the big W. You are a football fan. I know you're a White Sox fan. So I like the White Sox here today. I also like Michael Kopech on the bump for Chicago. And I just think he's a really good pitcher. He's off to a really good start here so far this season, a 1.42 ERA. I know the Cubbies have done really well against right-handed pitching so far this season, but I think some of their numbers are a little inflated. Of course, they have the 4-game set at Coors Field, which, video game-like numbers when you go to Colorado. But again, this is all about Drew Smyly, and it's all about the White Sox. So the White Sox to win on the money line. And then Tim Anderson, I considered maybe a home run. He's plus 700 for a home run. I like the total bases. I think it's a little bit safer, plus 110. Like I said, maybe for him to have 2 hits tonight at plus 170 and play as well. This is what he's doing so far against lefties, speaking of video game-like, and it's a very small sample, but we'll get into his career numbers in just a little bit. 2 homers, 2 doubles, slashing 529 with a 1,000 OPS, that is OPS. My goodness, this is nasty. And then a 677 WOBA to go along with a 362 WRC plus. So that's video game like stuff that is not going to be able to keep up. It's unsustainable. But for his career, he's slashing 327, 352, and 525 with a 370 WOBA. Dude hits lefties really, really well. This White Sox team is really good against lefties. I think that they get 4 or 5 runs here today. The team applied totals at 4.5. That's one I wanted to give you as well. I wouldn't go the 5.5. I'd get the 4.5. It's a little juice, but I do think they have their way with Drew Smyly. Jose Abreu is a guy that hits lefties well. Luis Roberts, a guy that hits lefties well. There's a lot of guys in their lineup that does hit lefties really well. Convery, I like the steal more than the home run today. Weather is cold and crappy here in Chicago. He is due to swipe a bag. I was actually looking at that as well, to be honest. It's just it's a Tim Anderson day here today. Let's get him to score a run. Let's get him to have on base a couple times. Maybe go yard, total bases 1.5, maybe a couple hits, maybe to swipe a bag. It's a Tim Anderson day here. And then also on the board, you saw the Toronto Blue Jays up against the New York Yankees. This is Alek Manoah on the bump for the Bluebirds. And like I said earlier, he's been basically perfect so far this season. 4-0 with a 1.44 ERA in 3 starts against the Yankees. 7K, 9K, 7K. He's only allowed 3 earned runs in 17 2/3 against the Pinstripes in his short career. His strikeout prop is actually 6.5 at plus money. I think that's interesting as well because he's had at least 7 in the 3 starts against the Yankees. And the other matchup that I had there is Tampa Bay. I like Tampa Bay over Oakland. The A's have the highest strikeout rate in all of baseball. They are in the bottom 10 in all the categories that I look at. WOBA, WRC+, ISO, on base percentage, home runs. They're not going to be a great offensive team this season. Tampa Bay, I like their squad, always undervalued in the betting market. So even though they're on the road, we can get them at a decent price here at minus 120. So that's it for the baseball. We will have a whole lot more in an FTN bet tracker. The guys are crushing it so far. Frank, MLB Dream, Josh Gross, a lot of great MLB bettors over at FTN. And of course, the betting package, as you know, if you get it, you get all the picks across all the sports, Discord access, as well as tools. We will break and we'll talk some football here next. And we do have a free NBA bet to talk about as well. Don't go anywhere. So in case you missed the NFL draft and you weren't able to really dive into some things that happened, here are the wide receivers that were selected in order. So these aren't fantasy rankings. They're not dynasty rankings. It's just in order. Drake London was the first wide receiver off the board. In case you missed yesterday's show, just wanted to roll through a couple of these guys again. Garrett Wilson, number 2 off the board to the New York Jets. I really like what the Jets are building offensively. Zach Wilson, of course, will be in year 2. Garrett Wilson, I think, the most complete wide receiver in the entire draft. I really do like what he has to offer. Elijah Moore in there, and then they drafted Breece Hall. They still have Michael Carter in the backfield. I thought they had one of the better drafts, an A-plus draft. Sauce Gardner, cornerback for the Jets, 0 touchdowns allowed in 3 seasons, the span of 37 games. Never had a quarterback complete more than 1 pass against him last year. Unbelievable. So they got themselves a top corner. Jermaine Johnson fell, and then they got Garrett Wilson. And then the madness happened, right? The Saints traded up for Chris Olave. Detroit traded up for Jameson Williams. Right around that time, Hollywood Brown was traded to Arizona. And by the way, DeAndre Hopkins suspended for the first 6 games of the season. Rondale Moore season, back on maybe. But also Hollywood Brown, who played college football with Kyler Murray. These guys were best buds, roommates. Maybe he had a little bit of a say, because there's been a lot of negative reports around Kyler. Does he want to be there? Is Arizona going to pay for him? I thought that they catered to some of his concerns, and trading for Hollywood Brown I think is good for him, right? Check mark. That's okay in his books. Also, A.J. Brown was flipped around that time to the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't love the landing spot for Dotson. I think there's a lot of question marks with Washington. Certainly, they need a number 2. Treylon Burks is very interesting, of course, because A.J. Brown leaves a lot of targets. Who are they going to go to, right? They're probably going to go to Treylon Burks. I know that they have Robert Woods, but he's not going to be 100% with the knee injury to start the season. At least I don't think he will. But also, he's not a big target hog guy, right? There's still a team that wants to run the rock, but out of that list, I think from a redraft standpoint, it's Drake London for me, and then it's Burks. Like, those are the 2 guys that are just going to get a lot of volume and a lot of opportunity. You still have Terry McLaurin in Washington, and George, if you want to bring up that list, you still got a couple of Jets guys with Garrett Wilson in there as well. Detroit's got a lot of moving pieces. There's no question, right? With all the pieces that Detroit has, They bring in DJ Chark, they got Amon-Ra St. Brown, they got Hawkinson, Swift catching balls out of the backfield. Olave, I think would be maybe number 4 for me. I would probably, or number 5. I think Watson, as you see the 7th wide receiver off the board, a lot of opportunity in Green Bay. He kind of plays a lot like MVS, but there's no MVS. We know there's no Adams. It can't be Allen Lazard all year. And then down the list, like, you can't tell me that Pierce, Thornton, Mechie, Robinson, you can't take them ahead of a guy like Sky Moore at Kansas City, linked to Patrick Mahomes, no Tyreek Hill. I know they brought in Juju Smith-Schuster, but a real opportunity for Sky Moore as well. And I like Pickens. I don't love him from a fantasy standpoint this season with Pittsburgh, but he's a really good wide receiver, and I think he's better than a lot of the wide receivers that went ahead of him too. And Jones was the worst pick in the entire draft, I think, at least from a wide receiver standpoint. What are the Bears doing? He's basically a punt return guy that's been in college for 5 or 6 years. He's pushing 26, I think, which is not ideal. I don't know what the Bears were thinking. You want to set up Justin Fields for success, and that's your pick? Yikes. Allen Robinson's gone. Cole Kmet, skyrocket up boards. We'll talk about him another time. We'll break. We got one more segment. We got the free NBA Player of the Day, and I got a couple props for you. Keep her locked. Welcome back in one final time. So our free NBA bet of the day is the Milwaukee Bucks here to cover +5. So they had the big victory in game 1 at Boston, 101-89. And Giannis didn't even really shoot that great. 9 for 25 from the floor, 0 for 2 from 3. He's not a big three-point guy, but he didn't really shoot the ball that well. He did have the triple-double, only 24 points, 13 boards, 12 assists. It's tough not to back this one. I really do dig it. I like this Celtics squad. We have I think as a group here, as a show, we have 40-1 for them to win the NBA championship. Was a nice long shot bet, courtesy of our guy Frank Brank, who came on the show and gave some picks after the NBA trade deadline. But I do like +5, and how could you not take the +5? There are a couple other props that I do like here today. Steph Curry. You can get Steph Curry for 4 threes at -165, or you can take him for 5 threes at +140. Are you with me? 5 threes. He was 5 for 12 from beyond the arc. He didn't shoot the ball all that well in game 1, 8 for 20. His point props at 26.5. I like that as well. He only had 24, but he didn't shoot the ball all that well. So give me Curry over 4.5 threes, which he's done in back-to-back games with 5 trays. Give me the over 26.5 for Steph Curry as well. And the Golden State Warriors on the money line, I think that they take a 2-0 series lead against Memphis. And the Bucks not only cover, I think they win the game as well. All right, have a great Tuesday. We'll be back tomorrow. Cheers.